Okay, this is my Gmail. Okay, hold on. I'm trying to focus here. This is my email. Okay, this is my email. ASITISNP at gmail.com. Okay, I'm starting off a little shaky. Anyway, this is Uncle Nelson. Now, this is the first time I think that I have introduced myself. I've made several videos and I posted them. And it wasn't deliberate. I was not trying to hide. I don't have anything to hide. But throughout my work, one of the things that I want to make clear to you is that my intention is not to create a following, not to create a relationship of any kind with anyone who sees these videos. If anything, my primary purpose is to help you to create a better relationship with God. From the outset, I want to make it clear to you that I believe in healing from mental illness. I believe in healing through a power greater than yourself. And I believe that that power greater than yourself is God. Now, we've talked about the disease of mental illness. We have talked about a lot of things, but today I'm going to talk about step one. This is a 12-step process, and there's nothing new about what I'm doing. What is new is that my focus is on mental illness and insanity, as opposed to, say, alcohol or drugs or obesity or gambling or any of the other addictions. There are many, many 12-step programs around, and millions of people have healed through those 12-step programs. Prior to 1935, alcoholics and addicts and people with other addictions were pretty much told that there was no hope. Well, this is 2018, and people with mental illnesses are still being given that same message of hopelessness. That the only way you're going to get better is through pills and medication, and that you must take those pills and you must take that medication if you want to stay healed. Well, to me, that's a fallacy. And I want to try to debunk that myth. And I want to debunk that myth by using these 12 steps. Now, why do I feel so strongly about that? Well, a lot of it has to do with my own personal experience. If I give you my sobriety date, the day that I stopped drinking, I will give you September 28th, 1986. But I like to add to that a sanity day, and I will give you October 6th, 2006. Now, there are a lot of people who will watch my videos and listen to my videos, especially people who've known me in the past. And they will say, well, Nelson, you know what, you're still crazy. Maybe I am. But I'm going to tell you a story. I had a cousin, and she fought the school board in Raleigh. When the Supreme Court said schools had to be integrated, segregation was wrong, the North Carolina government refused to integrate the schools, and Raleigh did not integrate the schools right away. My cousin fought the school board, and one day my cousin was suffering, and she was suffering by herself, really, because the community that we lived in, we were afraid. We had rocks thrown at our house. We had eggs thrown at our house. We had water balloons. You couldn't walk down the street. You didn't know what was going to happen when you walked down the street. She had crosses burned on her yard. Her husband lost his job. And she kept fighting. She'd always get off of the car. She could drive, so one of her peers at work would drop her off down in Cameron Village, and she would walk home. One day she was walking down the street, and one of our nosy neighbors called her, and they said, Elwina. I use her name. I use her name because she is a hero, and she's one of those unsung heroes. She was one of my role models, and she was one of my heroes because she had courage. So she's walking down the street, and this nosy neighbor said, Elwina, why don't you leave those white folks alone? She said, you know they're never going to change. Why don't you just leave them alone? Cousin had two bags in her hand, and I think they both had books. And she looked like she was weighted down, but she was probably weighted down from the fight more so than from the books. And she stopped, and she said, I have come too far to stop now. I've come too far to turn around. And that neighbor said, well, you need to stop. You know everybody is saying that you're crazy. At that point, my cousin put her bags down. And my brother and I, we were small. So, there's going to be a fight. So we wanted to see if these two grown folks were going to fight, we wanted to be there. Well, she put her bags down. And she turned around and she said, Miss Kate, I want to thank you. I want to thank you because I prayed diligently this morning. She said, and I asked God to send me a word, send me some encouragement. Because, sometimes I do think about giving up. She said, but you just gave me the encouragement that I needed. The woman said, what? I just called you crazy. She said, exactly. She said, and you reminded me of something that my papa told me many years ago. He said to me, Elwina, it's just when they call you crazy that you know you're on to something. So if you're sitting there watching this video and say, you know what, Nelson is crazy. Yeah, I might be. But you know what? I also might be on to something. And what I'm on to is that you can heal from mental illness. We should drill into every mind of every human being that healing and recovery from mental illness is not new and it's possible. God is still in the business of healing. African Americans in particular, we went through 400 years of slavery, and there's no recorded history of PTSD. You have guys who serve in the military, and I respect them greatly. Many of these boys are poor, and they have no opportunities in front of them except to go in the military. And I've seen a lot of young men go in the military and come out and use their GI benefits and use their military benefits and use their military experience and do extremely well. And these are young men that probably would have not have had opportunities otherwise. I applaud them. But I see a lot of young men who go in the military and come out and they get a diagnosis of PTSD. I see 22 veterans per day committing suicide. A recent study was done on these veterans who have committed suicide. And do you realize that 25% of those veterans that had PTSD diagnosis had never left America? They had not been in war territories. See, when we say PTSD, we associate that with war and atrocities of war. Another 25% of those veterans who had left the country had served in capacities that did not require them to be out in the field where they would have seen these atrocities. So my question is, if they're committing suicide with this PTSD diagnosis, what is the underlying root cause? What kind of maladies did they have before they went in the military? I worked in an agency that there were 1,000 children that walked through that agency, and all 1,000 of those children were diagnosed ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. What the parents did not know was that in order for these children to get services, they had to have a diagnosis. Now, many of these were single parents, parents trying to work. And when workers got to knock on their door, workers would say to them, well, we will take your child out in the evening. We will help them with their homework. We will teach them this, that, and other. We will mentor them. Well, every parent would enjoy doing that, and it's free. The part that they left out was, in order for your child to get these benefits, the child has to be diagnosed. You have to be on Medicaid, and your child has to be diagnosed. When you diagnose a child with ADHD, you have sentenced that child. I know people that think that they're getting over on the system when they go to school and they tell lies so that their kids can qualify for free lunches. But when you put a free lunch tag on your child, you put your child into a group that says these children will underachieve. These are your behavior problems. But the code word is free lunch children. An ADHD child in school is a child who is expected to misbehave. So those 1,000 children who were given a diagnosis, many of them who had never been tested in other environments, many of them whose schools had not even identified them as behavior problems, the psychiatrists and the people in that agency gave them a mental health diagnosis of ADHD. After about 3 years in business, the business was closed down because the state recognized that this agency was not being properly run. They recognized that these kids were being misdiagnosed. The agency was closed down. The agency hired high-powered attorneys because the man had made over $30 million. So he hired high-powered attorneys. And the state buckled. They closed him down. They fined him, a little slap on the wrist. But you know what they never did? They never went back and told these people that their child might have been misdiagnosed. Can you imagine a laboratory that does HIV testing and you find out that the laboratory has a person or several people in that lab that have been just willy-nilly and careless with the testing, so that 50 to 60 to 70% of the people that came through and were diagnosed HIV positive may not be positive. When you give a person a diagnosis of HIV positive, you have given them a heavy, heavy load. And many times it's a death sentence. None of these parents were ever told that their child may have been misdiagnosed. How many people watching this video have mental health diagnoses that they should not have? I work for another agency, and there were people coming into the agency for treatment of substance abuse. Sometimes they were using alcohol, sometimes they were using cocaine. In the early years that I worked in treatment, it was not unusual for people to have insurance coverage with 30 days, 60 days, 90 days of substance abuse treatment. Treatment centers, for the most part, are in business, especially private facilities. They're in business, and business is business. When you're in business to make money. So when a person walks in with 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, they're going to get 30 days because their insurance will pay for 30 days. Well, the insurance companies got wise. And they said, you know what? This substance abuse treatment thing is not working. So we're going to allow the person a detox. And then after detox, they're going to have to justify every single day that they remain in that facility. But what the insurance companies did not do was they did not make that adjustment to the mental health piece. So a person might walk in with detox only for substance abuse and 30 days, 60 days, 90 days of mental health treatment. So the psychiatrist said, well, we want to do what's best for the patient. And in order to do what's best, we need to keep them here. Because the longer they stay in treatment, the more likely they are to stay clean and sober when they get out. Really? There's no proof of that. None at all. But the longer they stay in treatment, the longer that agency or that hospital will be paid. So what they would do was routinely give a person a diagnosis of bipolar. Bipolar. And I'm just amazed looking at this person saying, you know what? How can you give that person a diagnosis of bipolar when the only thing that they're doing is describing to you the behavior of a person on cocaine? When you are working and you're using cocaine, you know that you're going to get paid on Friday, so your mood soars in the air. You're up. And when you get that paycheck and start snorting that cocaine, you're up. And by Saturday, you're just way up. So you're on the other end of that pole. Sunday night, you got to go back home and face your landlord, face your wife, face those bills, and you don't have the money to pay them. Wow. So you go from one pole to the other. You go from extreme feelings of high to extreme feelings of low. And those are the feelings that you describe when you talk to your psychiatrist. But it's all drug induced. But the psychiatrist may sit there and talk to you about brain chemistry. Really? Really? No, it was drug induced. So that person who came in with a drug problem walks out with a drug problem and a diagnosis, which he believes a mental illness. The sad part is the drug problem could have been addressed through a 12-step program. There is no program to address that bipolar diagnosis. But what I'm saying to you is this 12-step program that we're talking about right here can address that mental health issue. Did the person have a mental illness? Probably. Did they have it before they used the drugs? Probably. You see, a person who is spiritually fit will go out and take one or two drinks, get a little buzz, and go home. But the 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old high schooler who goes out the first time they take a drink and they get sick and they throw up, or the next day they have the worst hangover, but yet they can't wait to get out and get drunk again. Why? Because that alcohol is medication for what's really wrong with them. They have a spiritual malady. And you know what they soon realize? Is that they're powerless over it. Think about powerless. And that's step one, powerless. Do we have a choice about how we're born? Do we have a choice about where we're born? Do we have a choice about who we are born with? Nobody has a choice about their mother or their father or their home life. You're born as an innocent baby. And many times we're born with parents who have demons. Okay, I'm going to stop this right now.